Hello, April Rameé here of Antler Alchemy. I'm here to discuss today a topic that is near and dear to my heart: addiction, herbs, and psychedelics. So, in my experience, I don't think there's any one way to define addiction. I think that there's varying degrees or levels, if you want to say, of addiction. There's lots of different ways for people to play out their addictive behaviors, either through alcohol, drugs, working out, controlling their food, or other obsessions that have turned into more of a deeper addiction than just a passionate obsession. I think that there's a fine line between passion, obsession, and addiction. And one of the things that I found for myself is that underlying most of my personal addiction, there's a sense of either wanting control or losing control. Either for me, I'm addicted to alcohol. So there was a sense of being so in control of my life all the time and having to be so on point and being so wound up and anxious and trying to be so perfect. I went to alcohol because I felt as though it put me on a level with others where people could relate to me. I was more fun. I was more laid back. I was, more of the party. I was able to really just kind of let loose and let go of all my anxiety and fears and stresses. However, what I found over time was that all the things that were underneath me, the anguish, the angst, the anxiety, the fears, eventually, if I became blackout or even if I was just drinking a little bit, those would show up, those would come out, or I would recognize them in other people, and then I would be the one that would play out those roles. So I'm not an addiction specialist by any means, but I can only speak of my own experience, case studies with my clients, and the decades that I've spent in like group therapy and my own personal physical therapy. And so let me go into a little bit about the history of why I think I have an addictive personality, and then get into about, herbs and psychedelics. So in my life, I feel like my addiction has stemmed from an ancestral lineage. There has been trauma that has been passed down from generation to generation. And I happen to be from a significant amount of cultures that have been oppressed. And alcohol and drugs has been one of the ways of oppression because there's a disconnect from their personal nature and self when one is engaged in disassociatives of the sort of drugs or alcohol, bringing as that being a depressive and causing more of a depressive nature to show up. And so I've really also had this addiction that came from anguish and anxiety in my world, and also growing up in domestic violence and confusion on how to be in control. There was a dichotomy that was taught in my family, a contradiction around following the rules, but then breaking them. And I really appreciate being taught that it's okay to break rules. However, at the same time, I was taught that I was supposed to fit in to society and follow those rules, which did not fit for me. And it didn't make sense because when I was growing up and I was really young, I didn't feel young. I felt ancient. I felt like I had known all of these things before and been here. And I felt like what I was experiencing and what people were trying to teach me was pointless. I just didn't understand it. I wasn't seeing the connection to what was really important in my life. And to me at that time, it was reading books, reading about exploring, going out into nature and talking to plants and hanging out in the woods. And the thing is that at that time, no one in my family had the language to describe to me what it meant in my experience. Right? Like no one knew what an empath was. No one knew what it meant to be able to talk to plants. No one knew what it meant. And if they did, they didn't talk about it. And so I was under the impression of this like idea of, the only way to get your expression out there was to be full on, to be loud, to be argumentative. And that was because it's what I learned in my family, or slightly manipulative. And so what happened to me was that I didn't really fit into that paradigm, and I felt really unsure. I didn't feel safe a lot of the times. And I want to give my parents credit. They weren't horrible. They weren't the best, but they weren't horrible, even though there was domestic violence and a lot of anger and aggression. Because at the same time, while they just didn't know how to deal with the ancestral trauma that had been put on them. And at the same time, they were my biggest cheerleaders and always were encouraging me to do what made me happy. I just didn't have elders or people around me who had the language for what actually made me happy. So I lost myself. I didn't get directed into the right space with my energy. And so basically, I went in the direction of alcohol because I was able to feel like that was something that was accessible. I fit in, everyone was doing it, and it numbed me out personally. Like, it took away all of the pain, the anguish, it took away my drive, my ambition, and it made me just able to kind of function at the normal level and to fall in line and to do what was expected of me and nothing more, nothing less. However, the rebel nature inside of me never held down. And I think that, like, as an alcoholic rebel, what that meant is that I tended to have more, when I was at the top of my extreme, I tend to have more aggression that would come out and I would hurt people. And that was really challenging for me because in myself and in my soul, I didn't feel as though that was part of me. That's who I was. I didn't feel as though I was someone that was meant to hurt people and to be here that way. And I realized it was because I had been hurt and I had only learned how to hurt people to get my voice heard. And so dealing with addiction, one of the first things that helped me deal with addiction was mushrooms, psychedelic mushrooms. And in that, what happened is it was because I was depressed, right? I was going towards these alcohol and drugs, because I was using drugs at the time, for depression. So psychedelic mushrooms really saved my life. It opened me back up to nature, talking to trees. And even though I still didn't have the language at the time, I felt like I could meet people again and be friends and operate in the world like how I was, a little bit more how I was before. And that was going well until I was raped. And after I was raped, I ended up going back to alcohol in a real heavy way. And I never stopped for about 5 years. And it just took me on a really intense journey of addiction. And alcohol was my gateway into other drugs because my inhibitions were lowered. I was searching for a deeper high. I was searching for a deeper numbing sensation. And also at the same time, like, there was a certain amount of power that I felt when I was drinking. I felt invincible. So that's why I say there's a little bit of this control that was going on, because I felt like I was losing control, but at the same time, I felt like I was gaining control of, all of the things that were oppressing me, all of the anguish and the angst. I felt like I could act that out and actually be that person and be a rebel and just be kind of like, forget everyone, forget everything. And I do what I want to do. And I do it because I want to do it. And it was a way for me to act out the part of me that just didn't feel like I was living the life that I was supposed to live. And I just didn't know what that life was. And so again, later, I ended up doing more mushrooms. And that was in 2006 when I first gave up drinking alcohol for 6 months. I still smoked a little bit of weed, but psychedelics then at that time, a mushroom journey really brought me back again. And reading the Dalai Lama and beginning my yoga practice again. And because I had let go of that during the time that I was drinking a lot in college. So I was reignited back into who I was. And I remember that there was a part of me that never died, that there was a part of me that knew I was here for something deeper, that there was a part of me, there was my innocence that had never left and that was screaming out to be expressed, to be the one that was taking the driver's seat, right? That innocent child that wanted to just be so happy with the world and make everything in harmony and make people's dreams come true. And so this mushroom journey helped bring that back for me, helped remove the depression, and helped make not drinking easier for me. And then it was the yoga practice and the meditation that also assisted with the practice, and it gave me an everyday ritual to do that brought me to like really be able to look at what was going on inside, to say, wow, that comes from this. This is coming from there. If I don't engage in this, that's that's what happens. And it was interesting because that's not where my alcohol journey ended. I went back to drinking again. This time because I felt like, oh, I should be able to engage in a social common expression that most people do and have fun with my friends and do what's necessary and just enjoy life. And so I played on that line. I skirted that line. And I just noticed that, like, even still, that addiction, that inability to really be able to be fully in control of my life at all times, I was losing control in ways that was not healthy for me. And eventually, I had another crazy episode that led me to going into sobriety even longer for a year and a half. And at this time, I'm still not sober from drugs. And by drugs, I just mean like Molly a little bit and some weed. But I don't really think it's like, I wasn't doing anything heavy at the time. And but they were ways for me to cope with not drinking. And I thought I was doing well in that. And then eventually the drinking came back in again. And at this time, I'm thinking to myself, wow, you know, like I'm doing much better. People can't tell that I'm having issues with my drinking. And it was because I had been doing a lot of internal work, meditation, right food, and then I began working with herbs. So when I began working with herbs, I began to heal in ways that I had not healed with only my meditation and physical exercise. Now, I really believe herbs to be the main missing ingredient from a lot of people's lives, because if you think about it, we are what we eat. So if you're paying attention to your food, but you're not paying attention to what you're drinking and you're not ingesting herbs, then you're missing components and minerals and things that are going to bring your body into homeostasis and balance and give you intelligence from nature. And so I started to pick up more on the intelligence of nature and started to realize that I wasn't alone, that I didn't have to feel and operate like I was some weird person that wasn't really meant to be here on earth. I began to start to find my purpose. I began to understand that I was supposed to be working with herbs, and that's why I talked to trees, and that's why I found nature so exhilarating when I was younger. And many of us feel that way. It's not normal for us to feel like we're not connected to it. And I feel as though drugs and alcohol and addiction helps us disconnect, or it's a way of us reconnecting to a part of ourselves that is in the ethereal, right? Because it takes us away from the current reality that's being pushed on us, and it brings us into a reality that we feel like we can exist in. And so that's why it's easy to get addicted to these substances. So the other thing that I found is that I really found a couple of herbs that really assisted with me being able to show up socially and also be able to, you know, be in the world socially and feel like I could lower my inhibitions, that I could be a part of the world, and that I could open my heart, because as an empath, as a person who holds her energy in, it can be challenging to be in these social experiences that ask you to be put out there. So mushrooms would help deeply with that for me, especially when I would go to more of these conscious festivals in the beginning. Being able to be on mushrooms allowed my heart to open, allowed me to go into the parts that were in nature. It took me away from the parts that would be focused on alcohol and partying. It brought me to the places that people were doing meditation and yoga and sound and, you know, focusing on walking on hikes that were really more in tune with what I really wanted in life. I felt as though mushrooms really brought me to my tribe. And so then from there, the herbs started to drinking those, started to cleanse me out, started to bring balance to me. And the two herbs that I've uncovered in this process as well, in a very ceremonial format, that have really assisted with me in my addiction, is cacao and kava kava. So I spoke a lot last month on cacao and just really the benefits of the heart opening that it offers. And it's a wonderful beverage that I enjoy, and sometimes will, not sometimes, but majority of the times will drink when I'm doing social experiences where I need energy and I want to be out, and maybe my friends might be drinking and I don't want to drink, but I want to have fun and I want to be a part of everything, and I don't want to feel closed off or judgmental around my friends, because honestly, they're great people and not everyone has a problem with alcohol. So I love cacao for that. Then the other one that I found in 2012 from a Hawaiian elder was kava kava. I was at Burning Man and I met this Hawaiian elder, and he was preparing kava kava, and that was his offering every day from 3 to 6. So every day I went to visit him before 3 and helped him prepare the medicine, and stayed pretty much until 6 every day, 3 to 6. And just learned about the medicine, learned about how this herb was used in the Pacific Islands as a herb, as a drink, to be able to bring the community together, to be able to have discussion, to be able to calm people down and to lower inhibitions. And it was another one that kind of alters the experience of who you are without being, without, disrupting. Right? It just brought me closer to who I was again. It was an herb that really was like, I'm here to facilitate who you are, and I want to be a part of that. So kava kava is a root that's in the Pacific Islands, and it is very powerful. It takes about 12 years for the roots to grow that you would want to harvest, and each plant has a different makeup of kava lactones. And these kava lactones are what is necessary and what supports and the medicinal quality of the plant. So it supports anxiety, depression, stress, pain in the body, spasms, and it also helps with addiction. It's great because it's one of these herbs that I've found works really well with alcoholism, because one, you're not able to drink on the plant. It gets into your liver, the kava lactones build up there. Two, it's a plant that you need less over time because the kava lactones build up in your liver, so you don't need to drink as much as you drank the first time if you're drinking it consistently. So then it's one of those herbs that like lowers you need less. Like, how often do you hear that? You need less of it as time goes on to feel the effects. And then the other thing is it has this like very calming effect at the end. So once you're done, it helps with anxiety and insomnia. So once you're done drinking, you're able to relax, you're able to go to sleep. And it's kind of like, for me, the one that I would do if I'm like, oh my God, it's been a really long day, and you normally want to reach for that bottle of wine, that glass of wine, that beer, or that drink at the end of the day, just to kind of wind down. So kava kava has that wind down for me, where cacao has that more like amped up. And one other honorable mention that I can talk about at another time if you're interested is hape. It's a tobacco snuff, and I found that it has helped other people with their addictions as well. And so for me, that's been a really important plant as well. So this month I've been really focusing on kava kava. I'm going to get more into about it next time, but I really just wanted to open the dialogue around addiction, and I wanted to see, share in the comments or send me an email if you're seeing this around your own experience with addiction, either that through yourself or family. Have you been able to find something that helps you with addiction? Do you feel like you need something else to help you? Because a lot of the times we have this transference of addiction where we move from one thing to the next thing. And to quickly talk on that, what I found is cacao and kava and hape, they are beginners that are going to help you remove yourself from those addictions, but you are going to end up using less of them over time. I don't use them very much anymore, as much as I did in the beginning. And yeah, so I just think that, you know, that's a really good question to ask, is have you transferred your addiction to something else? And I want to continue this dialogue. This is just the beginning. I feel like this is a very important conversation. And, you know, if you found this interesting and you want to talk to me about it, you can book a consultation with me one-on-one. I have free 30-minute consultations. And really, this is the work that I'm getting into, is the psychic medicine integration. And well, it's not work that I'm getting into, it's work that I've been doing. It's psychedelic medicine integration, like plant medicine integration around ayahuasca, mushrooms, because you have these like profound awakening experiences and you're ready to like go into it, and yet there's so much more that needs to be brought into place and integrated so that you can make your dreams happen. And that's where I come in, and that's where the herbs come in. And then also for preparation, if you're interested in like kicking addiction, if you're interested in lowering depression or moving into these spaces where you're working with these plants in a more ceremonial construct so that you can really work on deep things that are going on, then you want to work with me as well, because the herbs are going to assist you to prepare. And sometimes we don't need to go to the heavy hitters first. There are other ones that are going to like ease the path, right? Because the reason why I felt like I could drink a little bit more socially and people didn't really notice was because I'd done a lot of personal work. I had done stuff with herbs. I'd done psychedelics. I had been on ayahuasca a lot. I had drank a lot of San Pedro and been on many ceremonial journeys, quests, hikes, vision quests, sweat lodges. A lot of purification was done and confrontation of who I really was and why I was acting out in these ways, because of me being an empath, because of me picking up on other people's energies. And part of my gift is being able to express out things that aren't being said. And so when I'm surrounded by people that are angsty or dealing with addictions or having a hard time, that was the way that I was able to express, was through alcohol, through anger, through, you know, aggression, and through just kind of like jumping into that rebel spirit of mine, that part of me that like loves to be the rebel and just shake things up. So anyways, I just want to thank you very much for watching this video. If you've gotten this far, there's going to be more that I'm going to discuss. I wanted to just kind of really make it off the cuff, just really talk about it, because, you know, I attempted so many times to write this. I tried to edit, and I just don't think that works for me when I'm talking about addiction and my passion. So again, leave a comment. Let me know your experiences with addiction. If you're dealing with family members or yourself, if you're concerned that maybe you're not sure if you have an addictive personality, it does not have to be drugs and alcohol, right? Or if you have this anxiety and depression that seems to be crushing you and you're not really sure how to relate to it, or you've been working really hard at confronting yourself and you still feel like there's something missing and you haven't figured out what it is, then let's talk, because that's the integration and that's the herbs. And yeah, so just again, let me know how you feel about this video, if you'd like more, and I would be love to share more about this. Thank you.